Hello leaders, Patrick Jinks here, leadership and strategy coach and president of the Jinks Perspective, and this is episode 13 of Perspectives in Nonprofit Leadership. As always, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, click the subscribe button below this video. Don't forget to click the little bell icon as well so that you get email notifications when we drop new episodes. Also, don't forget, this week we do have a coaching sheet that goes along with this video. You can find that in the video description below. Download sheet and you can follow along with the model. Probably the most joyous element of my life when I was in organizational leadership was actually leading staff. It was the internal work that I actually loved the most, working with the people that were putting so much effort day in and day out toward the mission. And I probably learned more from them than they learned from me if I were to accumulate all of the knowledge over the years. One thing I learned about the process itself is that while I love the flexibility and the freedom and the trust that comes with just giving autonomy to people and allowing them to do their work, I know that structure is needed and it's valuable. And so there are models and frameworks that we can use, gives us points of reference when dealing with people. So there's nothing wrong with using models. There's times when that idea of being great leaders it has to take a little bit of a backseat to being an effective manager. And there's a little bit of a difference between those two things. What I want to share with you today actually isn't specific to the nonprofit sector at all, so you can share this with any leader that manages people. Just a couple of simple little tools that will help you in team management as well as individual performance management. So the first one is on an individual basis, and it's a model. I didn't make this up. I actually got this from my leadership coach and teacher, Dr. Jim Smith at Leadership Systems. But it's on a construct known as the expectation reality gap. And in fact, that's the first three letters of the acronym for the first tool I want to show you, which is ERGO. So the model is ERGO. And I've already given you what the first three letters are. The first word or the first letter represents expectation. What is the expectation of the employee that we're talking about? So when you're supervising, you're in direct supervision over an individual on your team, what are you expecting of them? The job description only gives you a little bit of the puzzle, but what about the actual projects that they're responsible for? Are they responsible for raising money? If so, what are the expectations? Not just from a dollar standpoint, but do you expect them to be making cold calls? Do you expect them to be a relationship manager? Do you expect them to be a data manager? Do you expect them to be a storyteller? What are the different things that you expect of them? And make sure that that's clear between you and the employee, that both of you understand that expectation going in. The second is reality. And that just simply says, with reference to the expectation, what are you actually getting? So this is what we expect. The reality is this is what we're actually getting. And that mirror needs to be held up throughout the year, throughout the tenure of the people that you're working with. I always say that if there are any surprises for either party during annual performance reviews, something has gone terribly wrong in the leadership process somewhere. These are things that need to be on the radar screen for everyone the whole way through. We're clear on the expectations. We're in agreement on what the reality is. And the third is, what is the gap? And the gap is just, if this is the expectation up here, and this is the reality that we're getting, somewhere in here is this gap that needs to be filled. What is that? And the gap can be described as either the pieces we're not getting, or it can describe the lack of competency being employed to get to those results. So for example, if the expectation is raise $100,000 and we raised 50, well, the gap is a dollar amount, it's $50,000. But if it's 100,000 and this is 50,000 and we know what we're seeing or what we're not seeing that is responsible for that gap, in other words, not enough follow through on donor calls, or poor management of the database, or inability to construct and tell a story effectively one-on-one with individuals. What is the competency gap that exists that is keeping you from the expectation. So when management schools talk about ERGO, or the expectation reality gap, they talk about bridging that gap. And the bridge to that gap is where the O comes in. What are our options for bridging that gap? Sometimes the option is they just need some coaching. Sometimes they need some very specific training. I need to learn Excel better, or I need to go to a public speaking course, or I need better training on how to manage my time. Another option might be a reassignment. Fundraising's not your best thing. You're great at writing. You're great at communications. Move you into the marketing department. It could be that the option is a 90-day probation. Perhaps the effort just isn't there. Termination could be an option. On the other hand, promotion could be an option. This gap could be in the other direction. You were expecting 100,000, you're getting 200,000. This person's blowing it out of the water. Maybe we need to raise the expectations. Maybe we need to give this person more responsibility, more money, a different job, whatever it might be. But your O helps you and your team member articulate the options that exist to bridge this gap. But the key is this expectation and the reality have to be very clearly stated up front, all in between, and at any point along the way that you're actually assessing the performance. Once you know what that gap is, then you can articulate the options. Okay, so let's talk about the second model that I want to share with you today. And this is a way to manage team progress along a project or an initiative. It's called the ARCI model. A-R-C and I. I didn't make this one up either. Actually, I've seen it in some places online. The letters switched around to RACI. Really doesn't matter as long as you get the columns right when you populate it. So ARCI is a mechanism to kind of show you who's involved in the team project or the initiative and who you're counting on for different elements along the way. The A stands for who is accountable. And this is the person ultimately accountable for the result. This is the person to make sure that the project is getting done. It is not necessarily, though it could be, the person who is responsible for actually doing the work, executing on the core components of the work in the project. This is just the person or people accountable to make sure the project is actually getting done. So it could be an oversight person, it could be a leader on the team, could be a co-chairmanship of a committee. The R stands for who is responsible. And a lot of times when we write these two words up here, people are confused about what's the difference between accountability and responsibility. In the ARCI model, it's simply this. Again, the accountable person is the person ultimately accountable to make sure that it gets done. The responsible parties in this case, for this model, are the people actually responsible for doing the work. We recommend no more than 2 people in the accountability phase, because if everybody's accountable, it's kind of hard to track who your point person is, who are you going to and saying, where are we on this project? So typically no more than 2 people here. Here, the responsible parties might involve a team. It might involve a number of people. Start with who the core people doing the work might be and list those people under who's responsible. Under C, it's who is consulted or who needs to be consulted along the way. So these are people you need some advice from, or maybe you need a sign-off, an endorsement. You need to get some data before you actually proceed with the project. These are people you need to consult with in advance and during the initiative. And finally, the I stands for who needs to remain or be informed along the way. Now, these are people you might not need their advice, you might not need their consent or their sign-off, but you want to keep them in the loop as to what's going on so they're not blindsided by something. Oftentimes, your board of directors is a group that you would want to keep informed about a major project or initiative that you're conducting. So this is really simple. I want to keep this video as short as possible, but these are 2 models that you can use in managing individuals and managing teams. Just gives you some reference points. Our final piece of advice on ARCI is when you're working with a team on an initiative or a project, don't just hand them the completed ARCI model and say, okay, you're accountable, you're responsible, You're going to consult these people and inform these people. Let the team populate this together. Creates great ownership and much deeper understanding. It's a teachable moment for them about how they're not operating alone in this project. There are interdependencies that exist along the way, and having them complete this model together gives that ownership and that understanding. As always, we'd love to talk with you if you'd like to learn ways that the Jinx perspective can help your organization with strategy or leadership. So there's a link in the video description below to schedule a free call with me at any time and talk about what's on your mind and how we might be able to help. Till then, we will continue to seek clarity, simplicity, and alignment in all of our mission work. That's the Jinx perspective. We'll see you next time.